Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 4 of everything you need to know to ace the new SAT math section masterclass here on YouTube. My name is Leksha Karnam. I'm the founder of That STEM Girly, and I'm so excited to be here with you. If you've missed the last 3 parts of this playlist, we have been going through in part 1, we have been going through the format and structure of the online SAT. In part 2, we started problem solving with content pillar number 1, algebra. In part 3, we did more problem solving in the advanced math content pillar. And here in part 4, we're going to be going through some problems in the last 2 content pillars, which are data analysis and problem solving, as well as geometry and trigonometry. So if you're ready to get started, I have linked down below a free downloadable worksheet for you so you can follow along with all of the problems that we are working on today and in all of the previous parts. And go ahead and leave a big thumbs up and check out the full playlist if you haven't been keeping up. So let's go ahead and get started. Alrighty, so for problem number 1, it says the table below shows information about the 14 cars listed for sale on an auto dealership's website. If one of the cars listed for sale is selected at random, what is the probability that the car selected will be a hybrid car priced at no more than $25,000? So, taking a look at the given table, you can see that there are a total of 14 cars that are split within 2 different sets of categories. So there are a total of 14 cars here, and there are 2 different categories. The first is the price of the car, right? So you can either have a car that is priced at no more than 25,000, or you can have a car that is greater than 25,000. The second piece of criteria that these 14 different cars are split into or categorized into are being hybrid versus non-hybrid or non-hybrid versus hybrid. So, right, we know this is a probability question, right? So to get the probability of a car being selected, right? We want to know how many cars are in our total pool, right? Because for any probability, it's basically a fraction of the total number of cars in the selection pool. So you would, on the denominator, you're going to have the total number of cars. And on the numerator, you're going to have the number of cars that falls within the category that they're looking for, right? So the number of cars that satisfy the given criteria, we'll say. So, how many total cars? 14. We've already established that. Okay, so that's going to go on the denominator. And when it comes to the number of cars that satisfy the given criteria, so what is the given criteria? In this case, we want the probability of a car that it will be hybrid and that it's priced at no more than $25,000. So, hybrid automatically knocks all of these off, right? So it's not going to be from this row. Okay. So it has to be in the hybrid row. And then it tells you no more than $25,000. So it cannot be anything that's greater. So it's going to knock out this row, right? So basically we end up with this number right over here. So 2. There are 2 cars that are both hybrid and priced at no more than $25,000. So we're going to put 2 in our numerator here. And then of course we can simplify anything, any fraction that you see on the SAT, you should be able to simplify it and just be on the lookout for answer choices in multiple choice questions that are either the completely simplified version of a fraction or what could actually be a little bit more tricky is when you have an unsimplified version. So if you simplify down 2 divided by 14, you end up with 1 by 7 or 1/7. And this is essentially going to be the answer that you would be looking for. If you do find that all of your answers are in terms of percentages, plug this into the calculator and set it to decimal mode so that it will give you a decimal amount and then that will give you your percentage. So if I do that real quick here, 0.1428, if I convert that to a percentage, then I get 14.28%. That's the probability that they will pick a hybrid car at this price point out of the 14 total cars. Okay. This next question, Tony buys 6 large pizzas for $77.94 before tax. How much would he be paying for 15 large pizzas? So the item itself, the large pizza, is the same. So we know that the cost per pizza will be the same. So this is a proportion problem. So one way that you could do this, of course, is if you know that 6 pizzas are $77.94, right? You could divide $77.94 by 6 to find the cost per pizza, right? And then you would take this cost and multiply that by 15 to find the cost for 15 large pizzas. Now, the way that I would suggest doing it is using proportions, right? So that's one of the skills that they are testing for on the SAT is your use of proportions. So in the same way that you would start setting this up, right, I would say, okay, so if 6 pizzas are costing me $77.94, I know that I'm buying 15 of the same kind of pizza. How much would that cost me? So notice that the numerator, this is the important part about proportions if you're not familiar, is you need to keep it consistent. So in this case, our numerator will be the number of pizzas and the denominator will be the cost of those pizzas, right? Now there is another way that you could have set this proportion up as well, as long as you're keeping it consistent, right? You could say, you could say that we have 6 pizzas and those 6 pizzas are $77.94 and now I have 15 pizzas and I want to find how many that's going to be. In this case, the consistency you're keeping is left versus right. So on the left, you're going to keep the number of pizzas and on the right, you're going to keep the cost of those pizzas. Right? So these are 2 different ways of setting up the same problem. As long as you're keeping it consistent, that is all that matters. And the reason why we're doing this rather than this process here is because this is a 2-step process, right? The idea that I had mentioned originally with the 77.94 divided by 6 and multiply that number by 15. This is a multi-step method versus with proportions, we can understand the implications all in one step. So I would actually prefer doing it, solving the problem with this first proportion on the left here, but you're going to get the same answer either way, right? Okay. So first step to solving proportions is you're going to cross multiply. So I literally sometimes I draw out the butterfly wings and I go 6 times x is 6x and 15 times 77.94. That's a great question. Nobody's expecting you to know that, so you would plug this into your calculator. 1,169 and 10 cents is 6x. And then to get x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 6. So when I do that, I will get that x is 194.85. So this is the cost of buying 15 pizzas, right? And I'll just show you really quickly here, even if you set it up the other way where the left-hand side is your number of pizzas and your right-hand side is cost, same thing, right? If I do cross multiplication, I'll end up with 16 or 6x equals 15 times 77.94, and then, well, you know the rest, right? So you will end up with the same answer here. Okay. So for this next problem, the 36-inch tires on a pickup truck have a circumference of 9.42 feet. So to the nearest whole rotation, which means it's only looking for a whole number, how many rotations must the tire make for the truck to travel 2 miles in a straight line? So here it's telling you that the circumference of a tire is 9.42 feet. So what that means is in the process of rolling, in making one full rotation, it is going to move forward 9.42 feet, right? So each rotation will take up 9.42 feet, right? So 2 miles. We're also given an amount here. We're given a proportion here. We're given that a mile is 5,280 feet. So if 1 mile is 5,280 feet, if you multiply this by 2, you will get that 2 miles is, so 5,280 times 2, which is 10,560. I plugged that into my calculator there. So this is the number of feet that we're getting. So again, we're going to set up a proportion here because we want to find a relationship. And so for this proportion, we know that, so we know that one rotation is 9.42 miles. We want to find how many rotations will make it 10,562 miles. So in this case, our proportion is structured where we have the number of rotations on the numerator and the distance in the denominator. So we're going to do the same thing as before. We're going to start by cross multiplying. So I'll get 9.42x equals 1 times 10,562 is just 10,562. And then to get x by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 9.42. So when I do that, I'm going to get 1,121.01, but then it wanted to the nearest whole rotation, so we will say 1,121 rotations. I just rounded to the nearest whole number. The next problem says a group of 1,300 people took a survey in which they had to select their favorite of the 4 seasons of the year, winter, spring, summer, and fall. So the incomplete table below shows the results of the survey. And so it wants you to find how many respondents said that summer was their favorite season. So this is, I believe you will have to make an edit to the worksheet if you're following along with that. I think it asked for the percent, but we actually want to find the number of respondents, not the percent of respondents that said that summer was their favorite season. So this actually gives you 2 steps, right? Because the table that they have provided here is giving you the percent of respondents that said that each of these seasons is their favorite. And we're missing the percent of respondents that said that summer was their favorite. So first thing we want to do is we want to find, well, what percentage of the total respondents said summer was their favorite. So to find that, well, we know when you add all of these percents up, you know that it has to get you 100%. So what are we going to do? This is a simple algebra problem, right? We have 3 constants here that you can combine like terms, and you'll end up with, so a simple algebra problem, right? We have 3 constants here. So when we add them together, right? When we add together 16 plus 22 plus 28, I will get a total of 66 plus x is equal to 100%, right? Solving for x, subtract both sides by 66, I will get 34. So this is telling you that 34% of respondents said that summer was their favorite. But again, we're looking for the number of respondents, not the percent. So we know that the total group was 1,300 people. So we know that 34% of 1,300 people said that summer was their favorite. So the reason why I emphasize that is because of is actually a key word. So when you say that something was some percent or some fraction of a quantity, that means you want to multiply them. And then when you see the word is, that means you want to put an equal sign there. So, for example, our conclusion from this 34% is that 34% of 1,300 respondents said, which basically is the same thing as is, right? Said that summer was their favorite season. So how can I interpret this? So the way that I would interpret it is I would say, okay, 34% of 1,300. So converting percentage to decimal, that means 0.34 times 1,300 said, which is, we said is the same thing as is, that summer is their favorite season. So this is the answer that we're looking for, right? The number of people. So now all I have to do to find the answer is multiply 0.34 times 1,300, right? So 0.34 times 1,300 will be 442. So this is telling you that 442 respondents said that summer was their favorite season. Okay. This next problem is that a pair of jeans that initially cost $65 is on sale for 40% off. As a part of the promotion, each customer will receive an additional discount of the marked sale price at checkout. So if the final price of jeans was $21.40, what is this additional discount that was applied at the register? So what they're telling us here is that we have an initial cost, right? Initial cost. And from this initial cost, we took out some percentage of this initial cost. And then from this number, we're again doing some additional discount here. And we want to find what is this additional discount to get the final price. Right? So we have basically all of this information except for the additional discount. So that's like our missing variable. So starting with the initial cost, what is the initial cost? $65. Wonderful. Minus the percent of initial cost that was taken out as the original discount. That is going to be 40% off. But how much is that you're removing? You're removing 40% of the initial cost, right? So 0.4 times 65. Then we have some additional discount, which we don't know, and that will get you your final price, which we're given is $21.40. So now we just have to solve this for x. So first thing I want to do is I want to combine like terms. 65 is a constant, and whatever this number will end up being is also a constant. So first thing I'm going to do is 0.4 times 65, and that will get me 26. So we're going to do 65 minus 26 minus x equals 2140. Again, combining like terms here, 65 minus 26 is 39. And then get x by itself. I would subtract both sides by 39. So you would get that negative x equals 2140 minus 39, which would get you negative 1760. And then cancel the negative on both sides. So you get that x is 1760. Yeah. So 1760, what is this? This is the additional discount at checkout, right? All right, the next problem is asking you to find the mean, median, mode, and range of this series of numbers. So the first thing is the mean. Mean, or the numeric mean, is the average, basically. So to find the mean, the equation for the mean is the sum of all the numbers divided by the number of numbers. So in this case, we're going to do 3 plus 5 plus 2 plus 15 plus 5 plus 5 plus 7. And then how many numbers is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So this, I would literally plug this into the calculator as it is, and that will get you 6. So the mean is 6. The next quantity it wants you to find is the median. The median is the number that's in the middle, but not numerically. It's the number that's in the middle when you order them in order of from least to greatest number. So the smallest number here is 2, followed by that you have 3. After 3, you have 1, 2, 3 5s. So we're going to write those all out. Then we have a 7 and then a 15 to finish us off. So to find the number that is in the middle, I'm going to cross out the outer 2, then cross out the next 2. Notice I'm crossing them out in pairs. So if you cross one out, you have to cross the respective one on the other side. We're going to cross another pair out. You're left with one single answer, so this is going to be your median. So the median is 5. So the steps to finding the median is you want to set them in chronological order or in order, right? You want to set all the numbers in order, including the repeats, and then you want to cut them out, first and last pair, next first and last pair, all the way until you end up with a single number. Now, if you have an even number of numbers, you'll notice that you'll have 2, and you want to find the number that's right in the middle. So let's say that you had 8 numbers instead of 7. So this is just an example. This is not the problem, but this is just an example. If I had 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 15, right? If I had this as my set of numbers, to find the median, I would do the exact same thing. I would cut the least and greatest in a pair, the next least and greatest in a pair, the next least and greatest in a pair. You end up here, you would notice if I cross out the next least and greatest in a pair, you end up with no more numbers, which you don't want to do that. So, since we have an even number of numbers, you end up with 2. So the actual median is going to be the number right in between 5 and 6, and that will be 5.5. So in this case, the median would have been 5.5. Again, this is just an example. This isn't what the problem is asking you to do, but I want to show you an example when there are an even number of numbers. All right. And then the mode is basically the number out of all of these options here that is repeated the most, right? So the mode is the number that is repeated the most. So you start out with 2, right? How many times is 2 repeated? Just once, right? Then you have 3, which is also just repeated once. Then you have 5, which is repeated 3 times, right? 1, 2, and 3. Then you have 7, which is only repeated once, and then 15, which is only repeated once. So, what number is repeated the most? 5. So the mode is going to be 5. And lastly, we have the range. The range is the difference from the greatest number in the set to the smallest number in the set. So that's literally what we're going to do. We're going to take the difference between the largest number minus the smallest number. So the largest number in this set is 15, and the smallest number in this set is 2. So our range is going to be 13. All right, so this wants you to find the same thing, but now we are using a dot plot. So this is testing a few different things. Obviously, it's trying to test if you know the mean, median, mode, and range, but it's also trying to make sure that you can read a dot plot. So there are a couple of different types of graphs and charts that you're expected to know how to read on the SAT, and a dot plot is one of those. So here is how I would deal with this, right? In your list of chronological numbers, I would literally go from left to right and start writing them out. So it wants us to find the mean, which is the same thing as before. But when you have multiple repeats of multiple items here, instead of just blindly adding each individual number, I would say, okay, there's 141, 142, but then there are 146, right? But then there are 247s, which means this is the same thing as doing 2 times 47. Similarly, we have 148, 2 times 49, 2 times 50. I'm just going to continue it down here. And then 3 times 51, 2 times 52, 2 times 53, 2 times 54, 50 plus 55 plus 56. So this whole expression represents the sum of the numbers. And then how many numbers are there total? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 17, 18, 19, 20. There are 20 numbers total. So then when I plug this into a calculator, and this will get you 50.45. This is the mean. Okay. Then we have the median, which is going to be computed in the exact same way as the last problem. So we'll cut in pairs. So we'll do the biggest and smallest pair, the next 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 biggest and smallest pair, next, 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 next. All right, and now we have what I was talking about earlier, where we have a pair in the middle, where if I were to cut them, I would be left with no more numbers, so I can't cut them. So you end up with 51, 51. What is the number directly between 51 and 51? Well, since they're the exact same number, the median is just 51, right? Okay. So median is just 51. The mode is the number that is being repeated the greatest. You can clearly see here that it's going to be 51 because that is repeated 3 times, right? And the range is going to be, it's going to go from 56, that's the largest number here, down to 42. This is the smallest number here. So the range will be 56 minus 42, which is nothing but 14, right? That's the range. Okay. So the next part of this problem is asking you if we remove the outlier, which is the shortest student or the smallest number out of this list here, then what are the new mean, median, mode, and range? So same data, but now you don't want to consider this 42. Pretend it's not there. We're going to cut it from here. Mean is going to be the exact same thing, but without the 41 at the very beginning. Oh my gosh, this was supposed to be a 42. Sorry about that. If I put in a 42 instead of 41, I get 50.5. So it's pretty similar, but yeah. Okay. So yeah, if I removed this 42 up at the front, then I would be left with, okay, same idea as before. So 46 plus 47, 2 times 47 plus 48 plus 49. Basically the exact same addition here, but in the denominator, it's not 20 numbers. You only have 19 numbers now. So if I remove this and then put a 19 in the denominator instead, I would end up with 50.94 or 95 if I rounded. So as you can see, the average actually went up a little bit compared to the original because you no longer have the smallest number kind of pulling it down, right? So now if I try to find the median of this new data set, same idea as before, we're going to cut the smallest and largest pair, the next 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 pair, and then you're left with one number that is 51. So 51 is going to be the median for this new situation. So it is the same number in this case. So that is important to note. And then the mode is also going to be the same, right? Because you still have that 51 has 3 repeats, and that is still the largest number of any one number in the data set. So mode is still going to be 51. And then range. Again, range is the difference between the smallest and largest number. So the largest number is still 56, but now the smallest number is 46 and not 42. So it'll be 56 minus 46, which is 10. So 10 is the new range here. Now we are into the last content pillar for the SAT math section, and that is geometry and trigonometry. So for the first question in this content pillar, it is asking you that a pyramid has a square base with a side length of 7 centimeters. So let's go ahead and draw out what it's talking about. Often for geometry and trig, you'll either be given a diagram that you can use, but if you're not, I would recommend drawing a diagram if you can draw it. So a pyramid, I'm not a great artist. You don't have to be a great artist. It's just good to kind of visualize what you're being dealt with. So a pyramid looks kind of like there's a base, and then it's a pyramid, so it's going to kind of like go up and like accumulate to a single point. Here's our square pyramid. So it's a square base with a side length of 7 centimeters. This means that this length right here is 7 centimeters, and since it's a square base, that means that all of these side lengths are also 7 centimeters. Okay, it's giving you that the height of the pyramid is 3/4 of the side length. So do you remember what I just said earlier about the word of? Of is a keyword that tells you that you need to multiply. So it's telling you that the height h is 3/4. So is, right? So height is, which tells you to put an equal sign there, right? 3/4 of, which tells you multiplication. the side length S, which is in this case 7. We know that it's 7 centimeters, right? So we can go ahead and compute this literally right out the bat, which is 21 over 4 centimeters. I like keeping things in fractions. It helps with my math. If you like decimals better for your math, you can keep it that way as long as the answer choices are in terms of what you're looking for. Okay? So it's asking you for the volume of the pyramid. That's the point here, is you want the volume of the pyramid. So for the volume of the pyramid, this is a equation that you were given on your SAT equation sheet. You were given this on the exam. So you should see that the volume of a pyramid is 1/3 length times width times height of the pyramid. So we have, okay, 1/3. Length and width are the same number. It's 7 centimeters, so 7 times 7. And then height, we just said, is 21/4. So I'm going to stick this in my calculator. So actually, you might notice that this 1 and this 21 cancel. So you end up with 7 times 7 times 7 divided by 4 will get you 85.75. And this is in centimeters cubed. Alrighty. So the next problem in the figure below, point A is the center of the circle. The arc length, the length of arc BC, which is from here all the way to over here, is 3/10 of the circumference. So BC is, that's an equal sign, 3/4 or 3/10 of, that's multiply, the circumference of the circle. Now we don't know what the circumference is, so we'll just call it 2 pi r because that is the formula for the circumference of a circle, right? Okay. But what we want to find is the value of x, which is this angle here. The angle of A is x degrees. It's also important to notice that it is in degrees. So this is one of those relationships that you just need to know, right? It's basically a proportional relationship, right? So the proportion of the total circumference that the arc length is the same proportion as the central angle, which is what x degrees is, to the total number of degrees in a circle, which the total number of degrees in a circle is 360 degrees. So let me just go ahead and set up this proportion to show you. So we know that the total circumference of the circle is 2 pi r. And we know that this arc length is 3/10 of 2 pi r. Right? Now we want to know the total number of degrees in a circle is how many? 360 degrees, right? And now we want to find this length right over here. We want to find x, which is basically the arc length BC. Okay? We can treat this like a proportion and do the cross multiplication. But before we do that, you might notice here that the 2.4 or 2 pi r will actually cancel. So this ends up being 1 over 3/10 equals 360 by x. Okay. You also could derive, so when you do the cross multiplication, actually, let me go ahead and do that. So when you do the cross multiplication, you end up with x equals 3/10 times 360, which is going to be 3 times 36, which is 108. So x is going to be 108 degrees. So there is another way that you could get to this position as well. This is kind of like a manual derivation. So there is an equation for arc length as well. So arc length, you can find it by doing 2 pi r times theta over 360, where theta is that central angle. And you would be wanting to find theta, right? But again, if you were to actually use this equation, we don't have an individual number for the arc length. So we would have to pass in this same proportion here. So we'd have to put in that the arc length is 3/10 of the circumference, which is equal to 2 pi r theta over 360. So then you'd have to cancel the 2 pi r's, and then you end up with 3/10 equals theta over 360, which is awfully similar to this, right? Then if I do cross multiplication, I end up with 10 times theta equals, right, equals 3 times 360. So if I cancel this, I end up with theta is 3 times 36, which is the exact same thing, right? That's 108 degrees. So you could do it either way. You're going to end up with basically the same proportion. All right, the next problem is that the glass pictured can hold a maximum volume of 473 cubic centimeters. So it's telling you what the volume is. And this is a little bit a different shape. You don't need to know the volume of the shape. You're not given the volume of the shape in your equation sheet, but you are given an expression for the volume here in the problem. So that's all you really need in this case. So if they don't give you an expression for volume, it's either something that you have seen before or you don't need to know the expression of the volume. Okay, so the maximum volume is 473 cubic centimeters, which is approximately 16 fluid ounces. What is K in centimeters? So since K, which is the value we want to find, is also given in centimeters, you can say that 16 fluid ounces is essentially extra information. You don't need to know this. So we know the volume. We know that the volume is 473 cubic centimeters. And then I have this expression in terms of K already. So all I need to do is solve for K. All right, great. How do I get K by itself? Solving for K means you want to isolate K. So to get K by itself, I would start by multiplying both sides by 48. When I do that, I get that 7 pi K cubed equals 473 times 48, which is 22,703. And then I would divide both sides by the 7 pi here, so the 7 pi would cancel. And you end up with K cubed is 1032.42. And then you want to take the cube root of both sides. So you end up with K equals 10.1 centimeters, right? And these steps were basically just to isolate K. That is the goal with this. All right, in the figure below, O is the center of the circle and AC is the diameter. So what is the value of X? Seemingly a lot of random information, so let's go ahead and orient ourselves. So O is the center of the circle, which is this point right over here, is the center of the circle. And AC is the diameter, which is telling you like this line passing through the center from one end of the circle to the other end is the diameter, which is pretty self-evident, right? And then what is the value of X, which is this central angle right over here? Okay, so the way that I would find this out, right, is when you have a diameter, right, you're given that this is 25 degrees, right? And you know that the total here, the sum of all of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees, right? So we know that there is a 25-degree angle. What is this angle right over here? This angle is basically 180, which is it's the number of degrees in a triangle. It's also the number of degrees in a straight line, right? Which is what this diameter line is. So this angle is basically the difference between this total thing minus whatever x degrees is. So you can say that you can add this to that. So 180 minus x degrees. And then what is this angle going to be right over here? Well, this is a line coming from the diameter or from the center out, and this is also a line from the center out, which means that both of these are radii of the circle, right? So the two radii are going to have equal length, which means that their respective angles will be equal. So in reality, this third angle will also be 25 degrees. And you know that the sum of these will have to be 180 because that is the sum of angles in a triangle, right? So now we're going to go ahead and expand a little bit, but there's nothing really to distribute here. So, and then simplify by combining like terms. So you have 25 plus 180 plus 25. And when I do that, I'm going to get 230. So it'll be 230 minus x equals 180. Subtract both sides by 230, and you're going to get negative 50. So then divide both sides by negative 1, and you'll get that x is 50 degrees. Okay. A circle in the xy plane has its center at 7, 14. If the point 7 comma 34 lies on the circle, what is the equation of the circle? So what it's telling you here is if this is your XY coordinate plane here, and well, I guess it's not here. It's somewhere over here, right? This is the center of your circle at 7 comma 14. And then on the same X coordinate, but way up here, you'll have 7 comma 34, which lies on the circle, which means that basically this is your circle, right? This isn't very even. Okay. Here is 7 comma 34, which means that this is something like what your circle is going to look like. Not perfect, but the important bits to notice here is that this is the diameter, right? This part is the radius, right? Okay. So what is the equation of the circle? The point here, what is the equation of the circle? If you don't know, the equation of a circle is x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So this is when h comma k is the center and r is the radius of your circle. So we know what the center is. It's 7 comma 14, which means h is 7 and k is 14. So we're going to plug those in. So 7 minus, or x minus 7 squared plus y minus 14 squared equals, what is the radius now? The radius is the distance from 7 comma 14 to 7 comma 34. And this basically it goes up by 14, right? Or no, sorry, it goes up by 20. It goes up by 20. The radius is 20. So it'll be 20 squared, which is 400. Yeah. So this is going to be the equation of the circle. This next problem says the circle has a diameter with endpoints 8 comma 10 and negative 2 comma 0. What are the coordinate points of the center of the circle? So in this case, you are basically given 2 coordinate points. So if we do the same thing as before, we have our coordinate plane here. We have negative 1, negative 2 comma 0. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So way up here, way out here, these are the 2 endpoints of the diameter. So essentially, we want to find the midpoint of this line. The midpoint of this line will give you the center of the circle that it forms, which is going to be, woo, obviously not drawn to scale, but like approximately something like this, right? So we want to find the midpoint of this diameter to find the center of the circle. So to do this, the equation that you need to know is the midpoint equation. 2 points, if we call one of these points x1 comma comma y1 and the other point x2 comma y2, the midpoint of those two are going to be x1 plus x2 over 2 comma y1 plus y2 over 2. If you notice, each of these are basically the average, right? So this is the average of the 2 x values, and this one's the average of the 2 y values, okay? So in this case, if we set negative 2 comma 0 to be x1, y1, and 8 comma 10 to be x2, y2, let's go ahead and plug these in to find the midpoint. So that is going to be x1, which is negative 2, plus x2, which is 8, divided by 2. And then the y-coordinate is going to be y1, so 0, plus y2, which is 10, divided by 2. If we go ahead and compute these, negative 2 plus 8 is positive 6. 6 divided by 2 is 3. And then for the y-coordinate, 0 plus 10 is 10, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. So 3 comma 5 is going to be the center of the circle that is formed by this diameter with the given endpoints. All right, so triangles ABD and BCD are similar. The length BD is 6, so it gives you that this right here is 6. The length of CD is 12. This is 12. What is the length of AD? So we want to find this length right over here. Okay. So the main thing with this is that ABD and BCD are similar. Let's go ahead and color code them now. So ABD is this small one right here, A, B, and D. So this is one of the triangles that we are evaluating. And then BCD, BCD, which is B, C, and D. So this is the other triangle that we are evaluating. And so when you say that two triangles are similar, it means that the side lengths and angles of the coordinating sides are going to be proportional to each other. So we're given 6 and 12 here. So 6 is basically, so the way that I would do it, whenever I'm given two similar angles or two similar items, triangles, whatever, is I orient them in the same way. So this red one is already oriented like this, right, with the right angle right here. Well, this is a right angle too, right? So I can turn the blue triangle on its head. Actually, it would be like a turn this way to where here's our triangle with the right angle right here. The right angle is the side with the D on it. The tall end will be C and the short end will be B, right? And we want to find AD, right? We want to find this right over here, the shortest end. So the shortest end is going to be X. In this case, our shortest end is 6. Well, we know here that this is the longest end, right? This longest end has the exact same value as this side, so that's going to be 6. Here on the blue triangle, the longest length is 12, or the longest side length is 12, rather. The hypotenuse is going to be bigger than both of them. So what we can do is we can set up a proportion. So we can say that if our longest end of red is 6, and the longest end of blue is 12, given that, if the shortest end, if we're trying to find the shortest end of X, we know the shortest end of blue is 6. So now I'm just going to cross multiply. You could also simplify 6 by 12 first. You're going to end with 1/2 equals X by 6. Then do your cross multiplication. You'll end up with 2X equals 6 and X is 3. So what that's telling you is the length of AD, the length of AD is 3. All right. In the figure below, lines L and M are parallel, and we're given that y equals 30, which means that this angle right over here is 30 degrees. Z equals 45, which means this angle right over here is 45 degrees. And we want to find the value of X. So how many degrees is this right over here? Okay. Well, like we said before, right, the total number of angle or the sum of all the angles in a triangle is 180. So we know this angle and this angle of this big outer triangle right over here. So we can easily pretty much find what this angle is going to be, right? How? We're going to do 30 plus 45 plus this missing angle, which I'll call y degrees. So plus y equals 180. Combining like terms, 30 plus 45 is 75, and then subtract both sides by 75, and you'll end up with 105. So that tells me that this right here is 105 degrees. Okay. What use is this piece of information to me? So whenever you have a situation like this where you have two parallel lines, which are what these are, right? It gives you that L and M are parallel. So L and M are parallel, and it's cut by this transversal, which just means there's a line that cuts at an angle between them. It follows a few different rules based on the positioning, and these relationships can help you identify the angle, a different angle given one of the angles. So here we know that this angle is 105, right? So 105 and X are what we call corresponding angles. And they're called corresponding angles because they are at the same relative position of each respective intersection, right? So for this intersection, x degrees is right here. And then in the bottom intersection, 105 degrees is right here. So those are corresponding angles, and corresponding angles are equivalent to each other. They are equal, right? They are equal, which means that x degrees is 105 degrees. Yeah. For the next problem here, we have triangle ABC below, and we know that AB is equal to BC, and that's represented with these little lines here. So we want to find the value of the sine of angle CBD, which is, and the way I would find what this is talking about is I start where it starts and I trace my pencil. So C, B, D. The angle that's made by that is right here. So this is the angle. The sine of this angle minus the cosine of BAC. So BAC, BA, right? BAC. The angle made by this is right over here, right? Which apparently we're given is 34 degrees. We want to find the cosine of that and then the difference between them. So first of all, if you don't know, SOHCAHTOA, super important. Basically, to find the sine of some angle, let's just call it theta, it's equal to the side length that is opposite to the angle divided by the side length or the length of the hypotenuse of that triangle, right? If you want to find the cosine of some angle, that's the same as the side length that's adjacent to that angle divided by the hypotenuse of the triangle. And if we want to find the tangent of an angle, that is equal to the length of the side opposite to the angle divided by the length of the side adjacent to the angle. So that is what that mnemonic SOHCAHTOA means. I would highly suggest you imprint that in your mind. So first we have sine of CBD, so we're looking at sine. So sine of this means we want to find, this is equal to what side length is opposite this red angle here? DC, right? So it would be the side length of DC over the hypotenuse here, which is the side length BC. Okay. We don't know what either of those are right now, but we will be able to find it, okay? Minus the cosine of BAC. The cosine of BAC, while we don't have numbers quite yet, right? The cosine of BAC is nothing but the adjacent, so AD, divided by the hypotenuse, which is AB. We don't know either of those, but we do know we can find the value of cosine of 34 degrees by plugging this into our calculator, right? So make sure that your calculator is in terms of degrees since the angle here is given in terms of degrees, right? Once you make sure it's in terms of degrees, you can just plug in cosine of 34. And when you do that, you're going to get 0.829. So now you know that 0.829 is equal to this ratio right over here. So thinking about what other pieces of information we could use here, we know that this side and this side are equal to each other, which means that their respective angles are also going to be equal to each other. So we know that this angle is also 34, right? Which means that this is the exact same angle as this, right? Because all of the other angles are the same, right? So this angle is going to be the exact same as this angle right over here. So what is this angle right over here? We can find it. I mean, we can find this one too at this point, right? We have, this is our triangle. The sum of all of the angles in a triangle is 180 degrees. So 180 degrees is equal to this 90 degrees here, plus this 34 degrees here, plus this missing angle here. And when you solve for x for this, you're going to get 56. You're going to get 56 degrees, right? So this right here is 56 degrees. We can find what is the sine of 56 degrees by plugging this into the calculator. So we don't need this piece of information, but we know that the cosine is this. And then we know that sine of CBD is just the sine of 56 degrees, which again, make sure that you are in degrees mode. You're going to get 0.82, which is basically the exact same number, right? 0.829, exact same number here. So if you want to find the difference between them, the answer will be 0, right? This answer will be 0. Alrighty, and that is all I have today. We have now finished the entire problem solving portion of this masterclass here on YouTube. I am so excited. I'm so proud of all of you guys for learning all of this content. This is basically all of the math, all of the content that you are going to need to know. Obviously, you're going to see different types of questions, different applications of this content as you go through different SAT practice. So I would definitely encourage you to continue your practice, work on these problems independently and other problems independently. In the next video, I'll be sharing with you my favorite resources for further SAT math prep. So I'd highly encourage that you go check all of them out and see which ones work for you and use those to your benefit because you definitely still need more practice. And practice honestly really truly makes perfect in this case for the SAT or for any standardized test or to learn any content, to be honest. So you guys got this. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said earlier, if you are interested in tutoring with me, I have left all of the links in the description box down below. And I hope you can join me for the last part, part 5, in which I'm going to be going through my favorite resources for SAT math future preparation and some parting thoughts as I leave you guys after this 5-part series. So again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.